Well, one of the things that I really, one of the ideas I like from the book is one of the characters, Mishimo, has what you call narrative disorder, which is a disease that we would not diagnose today, and is sort of it sounds almost to me like calling it a diagnosis feels almost like a systematic gaslighting of sorts, because the disorder is I'd actually love to hear you describe it in your words, though I can take a shot at it, but
Sure.
how it relates to real life disorders that we would diagnose.
Sure. So it's definitely something that I personally suffer from. I could easily be diagnosed with this. And I wrote it as in this future, it is a recognized disorder. It's something that people diagnose and they know about. And I kind of thought of that in the way that often, the things that we decide to put names on or decide to collect as a constellation of symptoms or behaviors often really reflect the times that we're in and the things that we're concerned about. So, I think that narrative disorder exists now. As I said, it exists for me, but it's something that in this future, I think we're so into content right now. People are really consuming a lot of content in all different ways, whether it's written content from the library, whether it's Netflix, whether it's a podcast, whether it's any kind of this different content. We're really desperate for it, and so I was kind of seeing that increase into the future. And the way this syndrome works, this disorder works, is there are two main symptoms. One is this addiction to content, really fictional content, but it could be any kind of content. That you want more and more. I mean, honestly, we have so much content available to us. I have more books on my Kindle than, I'm sure some of my great grandparents ever saw, right? It's ridiculous. And yet we're always waiting.
At my Kindle.
We're always waiting for the new thing. We always want something more. We always want something else. We're waiting for our favorite author to finish the new one. And so that's one thing, this addiction to content and this constant, inhaling of content. And then there's something else that comes from that, which is that particularly if we're in a fairly uniform culture, sociocultural sphere, we're going to be in that content, we're going to be getting a lot of the same narrative tropes over and over again. And this is not just fiction. I think that we, in our culture, we see narrative tropes in news feature stories, in regular news stories, in advertisements. I mean, if you think about what can be conveyed in a 15-second advertisement, it's not just that they're telling that much story, it's that we are primed to put together the pieces of those short images that they're showing us into a story that is recognizable to us. We know what they're trying to tell us. And so that's the other part of narrative disorders, this kind of being very much attuned to narrative tropes, even in the real world, because we have just had them so much over and over. And by narrative tropes, some of that is the obvious sort of plot tropes, but also I think things like pacing, things like the way we describe certain types of characters, the physical assumptions that we make about certain types of characters, which are just pushed on and on by casting directors, right? And just all these sort of ideas about closure and different things. And so for the character in the book particularly, this provides a kind of intuition, but it's a dangerous one because very often in real life, things do not happen the way we expect them to from narrative tropes. But it can also be powerful and useful because if everyone is intaking those same tropes, a lot of people will act as if they believe the world is a story. And so there is a kind of prediction that's possible because so many people are acting on this collective kind of delusion. So that's what narrative disorder is. Mishima has a particularly acute version of it, which is why it affects her thinking sometimes, sometimes for better and sometimes for worse.